Britain must genuinely prepare for war if the armed forces are to be a credible deterrent. That's according to a group of former defence and security chiefs. Their comments published in a report by the new Bletchley Network also warns that after 2 decades of hollowing out, I think that should be, and diminishing firepower, the country needs a new model army that would turn us back into a respected land force. Major General Rupert Jones, who endorsed the report, told Times Radio the British Army is a shell of its former self.
If I could take an orchestra as an analogy, you know, you've got to have all the instruments, you've got to have all the top players, you've got to have enough violinists if you want to be a main player army. And we have made false choices over the last 20 years. We've hollowed out the British Army to a very considerable degree. Again, follow my analogy, we just don't have enough violinists. But what we've also done is we've said, actually, and we don't need any oboe players, and, you know, we'll get rid of the cello. Before you know it, you're not an orchestra. And there's a real danger. That is where the British Army is today.
Serving military chiefs are currently split on how best to prepare for war, with some senior figures believing the UK needs to prepare its citizens to fight, while others think that doing that would be alarmist. Whatever they decide, with war currently being waged on European soil and the British Army projected to be its smallest since the Napoleonic era, by the middle of the decade, something needs to be done. This is a debate that's really right. My son's nearly 16, and he's talked about whether he might have to serve one day as a sort of, you know, being formally called up because we don't have enough soldiers. It's actually getting through to younger ages that we're not in a great place. So what does that look like to others across the world who might want to do
Well, I think we've been really complacent, haven't we? So we spend 2.3% of our GDP on defence. So when you look at America, it's 3.4%. I think it needs to be about 5%. When you look at the numbers in the army, 75,000, there are 67 million people in this country. 75,000 people
the
in the
armed forces
army.
put together can't even fill Twickenham,
Exactly.
the stadium. I mean, that's shocking.
So what are we doing? So I think it is a real concern, actually, for all parents about whether conscription comes back.
I think we still see ourselves as this global leading power, and unfortunately, we're not, guys. The reality is we're not. Our infrastructure in this country is in the doldrums. We can't build to save our lives. We have poverty.
One of the biggest economies in the world.
Yeah, we might be, but the people in this country are already suffering. We have poverty levels in this country higher than some of the worst places in the US, where poverty is the whole state. We're not this global superpower that we used to be. So I don't think we need to necessarily have the greatest army anymore. I think we should have a smaller army that is better prepared. We've got soldiers who have the best equipment and the best tactical advances. That's what I think. Trying to get more. We've got to build the army. We've got to get more people. People don't want to join the army because it pays so poorly.
But we're 25% lower than we should be.
I understand that, but then it's the same on policing. Same in the NHS. Everywhere we look in this country, we have less staff than we need.
This is actually existential. I mean, there are forces out there that really do wish us ill, and you know, as they always say, we may not be interested in war, but war may well be interested in us. And just picking up on that quite useful orchestra analogy. I mean, if the conductor doesn't understand the importance of the orchestra, you're not going to get any great music, are you? And successive prime ministers have resisted calls from people who know what they're talking about, including, and particularly I'll say this of Ben Wallace, the last Defence Secretary, who had spent time in the armed forces. He was in the Irish Guards, I think, really does know what he's talking about. And he had pushed and pushed and pushed for a proper settlement. And time and again, this is deprioritised by the government.
But we do talk about our safety as being the issue. But let's look at what happened with Ukraine. It affects us in terms of energy prices. It affects food security. Indeed. We have a reason to have a presence elsewhere or to be concerned about what's going on elsewhere for lots of other reasons, not just because we might be under attack physically.
If we had 150,000 people in the army now, we still not be able to send those people to the Ukraine. So that makes no difference. It wouldn't make a difference if we had a bigger army. The Ukraine conflict with Russia would still be happening. The problem would be is if Russia then moved further. But currently, that's not the case.
But it's about deterrent, isn't it? So if
you think if we had more people, you think Putin would say, I'm not going to stop?
Putin senses how weak we are currently. So if we build it up, then actually there would be a force that would reckon with him and he would think twice about what he's doing.
The single biggest deterrent to Putin is NATO, and NATO needs people other than the Americans to actually man it. I mean, we have to be proper contributors to NATO, which we are at the moment, but will not be able to.
And also, just coming back to JJ's point, what politicians have been dining off when it comes to defence spending for the last 20 years has been technology. You know, you hear it all the time. You've heard it all the time for the last, well, we don't need so many boots on the ground because you know, we just need a really high-tech tank and we just need a really high-tech... Well, actually, A, so much of the technology they've invested in doesn't work. And B, I think Ukraine has proved that we do need boots on the ground.
Or they don't invest in it, and our Defence Secretary nearly gets shot out of the air because
Well,
they were jamming the plane. It's not
exactly.
great,
Or they
is it?
pretend to invest in it. They say we don't need the numbers of, you know, of soldiers because we're investing in tech.
Mass matters, as the army likes to say.